broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter. Welcome to the Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive radio news and talk show in the United States. I am your host, John Parker. I want to acknowledge there is a lot happening in the news today, and coming up after us, we've got the best progressive news and analysis on the radio with the Matt McNeil Show on AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, and Chew's Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820. For us today, it's our weekly episode we call Unpack This For Me, where this is where an expert guest joins me to unpack a particular issue, and we've got issues today affecting the LGBTQ and allied community, and really this is just the larger American community right now. So here is what our guest is going to unpack for us today. Epstein, because there's a lot there. The International Criminal Court putting Trump, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, and Secretary of State Rubio on notice. And then there's the whole, Trump revenge tour that needs to be unpacked. So my guest is David Reddish. David is the lead anchor and commentator for Occupy Democrats TV. He is a member of the National Lesbian Gay Journalists Association, Gallica as well, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics, and is also a Rotten Tomatoes accredited critic. He is the award-winning writer behind the novels The Passion of Sergius and Bacchus and the Sex, Drugs, and Superhero series. Friend of the show, David Reddish, welcome back to The Gailey Show.
Thank you, John. It's great to be back.
Okay, so let's start with Epstein. Where do we start there? Maybe Ghislaine, Maxwell?
Oh, well, Ghislaine, so it's an interesting place to start right now because Ghislaine Maxwell, so for our listeners who somehow have avoided this never-ending story, Ghislaine Maxwell was the longtime girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, who is perhaps the most notorious sex trafficker in human history, trafficked hundreds of young women, underage women, to his wealthy friends, and videotaped and audio recorded them while they were doing all kinds of illegal things with these poor women. Ghislaine Maxwell was his girlfriend. She procured women for Jeffrey Epstein and was very, very aware of everything he was doing. She's in prison right now. She was transferred because she is a convicted sex offender, convicted sex trafficker. She was transferred from a maximum security prison to a minimum security prison in Texas earlier this year, which just so happened to coincide with a meeting she had with Donald Trump's former attorney, who now works for the Justice Department. Isn't that interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, did she think she had a get out of jail free card with the Supreme Court, since the Supreme Court loves Trump and obviously Trump's DOJ loves her?
I think there was maybe the hope there. How much she actually believed the Supreme Court was going to throw out her conviction last weekend, I don't know. She did pursue it all the way to the Supreme Court, which, why would you pursue it unless you think you have a shot at winning, right? She was hoping that because Epstein was granted limited immunity in a past agreement. This gets complicated. Epstein had limited immunity for a plea deal that he had taken years before, and she was now arguing, because she was charged in connection with him, that she was also entitled to limited immunity, which would mean that her sex trafficking conviction should be thrown out. The Supreme Court, for whatever sanity they actually have left, would not stand for that one. So she's hanging out in jail for now in a minimum security cushy prison for women in Texas. And this is interesting. Over the weekend, there was a lockdown at the prison where they were not allowing anyone from the outside world to come into their facilities, except Ghislaine Maxwell had a visitor from, we don't know exactly where or who it was. It was kept under wraps, but she had a long meeting with someone who is presumably from the government, because only government officials could get past a prison lockdown. And they're talking about something, but we don't know what it is. Conspiracy theorists love to say that she has dirt on Donald Trump, and there is at least some anecdotal evidence to support that, like Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein being besties for 25 years.
And they already moved her from the maximum security facility that she was in, given the crimes that she committed.
Yes.
And I just, okay.
This is a sex offender, people. She is a sex trafficker, and the idea that anyone would make excuses for her is just nauseating to me. And what's interesting is right now, no one seems to be defending her, but people are kind of defending not calling her to testify or not giving her some kind of deal where she could testify against other people and share her knowledge of what went on with Epstein. It seems like she knows something about Donald Trump. And it seems as though he is going to great lengths to keep her quiet on that. But he also, and the people around him, are smart enough to know that if they give her any kind of commutation of her sentence, if they pardon her, though Trump has not ruled that out, if they pardon her, it would basically be an admission of guilt on his part that he did do something wrong and he's trying to keep her silenced. It already looks that way to most observers, I would think. And what's interesting about this is the people who are most championing probes into the Epstein files, the release of the Epstein files by Congress, getting more testimony from Ghislaine Maxwell, seem to be coming from the right. They are kind of loony conspiracy theorists that think Jeffrey Epstein is somehow an alien who was sacrificing babies in a pizza restaurant, drinking their blood with celebrities, and that somehow he has dirt on everybody. Well, the last part's kind of true, because he was friends with everybody. He was very, very wealthy. He was a wealthy donor. And he loved to take people to his private island for massages, which is how this grossness kind of begins.
We're talking with author, entertainment critic, and lead anchor of Occupy Democrats TV, David Reddish. David, first of all, I did not know about the whole secret government visitor to Ghislaine Maxwell. So, thank you for updating us there. This is why I wanted to have you on there. There's so much to cover. But also, there was reporting last week that you were also sharing with us about how unusual circumstances happened after Epstein, quote unquote, committed suicide.
Yes.
And was there tampering, and why didn't they interview cell block neighbors for 2 years? I mean, what unpack that for us.
So this is a very interesting subject, because you bring up the subject of tampering specifically. Was there tampering? Yes, we do know that for sure now. So the night Jeffrey Epstein took his own life, the night we know he died, no one's disputing the fact that he died. The question is how, right?
Did he though, David?
Well, I'm sure he's hanging out with Elvis and Michael Jackson right now, and he's going to send us all a postcard and laugh at everybody when he says, "I know the truth." No, he is dead, we hope. And the night of his death, the cameras in his cell were not working, and the cameras outside his cell were also not working, save for one of them. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and Kash Patel, the douche canoe FBI director, they released footage of this working camera earlier this year. Now, what was interesting about that is they said, we know there's a minute missing, but that is a technical error. There is always a minute missing at this time of day. It's just a glitch. Well, amateur sleuths on the internet took the file and analyzed the metadata and said, no, there's not a missing minute that didn't record. There is a missing minute that was edited out using Adobe Premiere software, because it has all the signatures that Adobe puts on this. So we know automatically that was tampered with. Since that time, the missing minute has been found, and it does show people walking around Jeffrey Epstein's cell. So there's some question there. In terms of documentation, which this was also something, this I think is what you're referring to, that came out last week, there are wild inconsistencies in statements by prison officials, the people who found his body, the people that examined his body, wherein was he found seated because he hung himself? Was he found seated more or less on his bunk bed where he had suspended himself? The noose was on the top of the bunk bed. That is one report. Another report says he was found on the floor, stretched out, with no noose on his neck. So that means the body was moved. Presumably, there were also a number of artifacts that were in his cell, various mementos, trash, different things that he was working on, including a journal. All of those appear to have been moved around. It seems like there may have been things that were taken out of the cell. So there are two ways to read this, in my view. One being that someone was purposely tampering with the scene to cover up something, including the fact that he may have been murdered. Or it's just really, really shoddy investigative work wherein people thought, oh, we found him, he committed suicide. It doesn't matter if we move stuff around because this isn't a crime scene, not stopping to think you have to treat an undocumented death like that as a crime scene. And plenty of, police from all over the country would tell you this, that you have to rule out a crime before you can declare, oh no, this guy just committed suicide, even if at face value that's what it looks like. I'm guessing that's also the reason why his cell block neighbors were not interviewed, as you say, for 2 years. They have given other statements that seem to contradict the official report as well. We don't know. What we do know is Donald Trump was president in 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein died. So if there was somebody that was powerful enough to have this man murdered in a prison, in a maximum security prison, and get away with it, someone who would have the resources to do that. I think around the time of his death, people accused Hillary Clinton of being responsible for it because she was supposedly at the center of some satanic baby-eating pizza restaurant.
Trump said that.
Trump said that?
Multiple times he was saying that it was the Clintons. The Clintons were behind it. Clintons, Bill, Hillary.
I mean, the lady doth protest too much, right? Like, why would you accuse people who are out of power? Hillary Clinton was not serving a government. Bill Clinton was not serving a government at that time. But you know who was? Donald Trump. And you know who would have had more to lose? Donald Trump. So to me, the logical suspect, if indeed we are investigating this as a potential crime, would be somebody from Donald Trump's orbit, someone with immense government power that would be able to get into the prison and manipulate all these documents, all the scene of the crime, everything like that.
So for folks that are like, why are we starting with Epstein? It actually has bearing to at least for me, the shutdown that we're all dealing with, and how Speaker of the House is refusing to bring the House back into session, or has been doing that. So we're going to take a break here, and we're going to get David's reporting and thoughts on that when we come back. Before we go, I want to share about our travel partner, Travel Marquette. I am off to Marquette this weekend. It is the Fresh Coast Film Festival, and for the past 10 years, I've been going to Marquette. And part of the reason why is that I love that I don't have to worry about being queer when I'm traveling there. It is a university town with a very active pride organization, Blue County, Blue City, and it has all the things that I need when I want to get away. Good restaurants, excellent bookstores, just relaxing, time out in nature, delicious bakeries. And I'm really grateful to be in partnership with them because the world sucks right now. And it's just been so nice to get in a car and drive to a place where I can just be myself and relax. And if you're in Chicago, you can hop a plane and do that as well. Direct flights to Marquette. So if this is something you would like to do, head to travelmarquette.com to start your adventure. That's travelmarquette.com. You're listening to The Gaily Show. More after this break. Welcome back to The Gaily Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. This is our weekly episode we call Unpack This For Me, where we sit down with an expert guest to take a deep dive into an issue facing the LGBTQ and allied community, and today, basically all of America. My guest is the lead anchor of Occupy Democrats TV, David Reddish. David, Mike Johnson won't or has not been swearing in a new Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going on CNN and sounding like a statesperson, saying, just get it over with and swear in the new congressional member, Adelita Gridavalia, and have the votes, release the Epstein files, and, oh, by the way, get the government up and running again.
Yeah, funny how that works. Mike Tiny Johnson, as we like to call him at Occupy Democrats, who, by the way, speaking of the bottom of the hour, I'm convinced Mike Johnson is the pass-around party bottom of the Republican Party. But that's another story. We can talk about that another time.
Have a drum roll effect.
Moving right along. Marjorie Taylor Greene has oddly become the voice of reason in the past week when it comes to both the government shutdown. She supports restoring healthcare subsidies for Obamacare, which is what the Democrats are holding out for right now. And she also supports immediately seating Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva from Arizona, who has vowed to be the 218th vote to release the Epstein files in full from the Department of Justice and FBI. It's interesting that Mike Johnson has dismissed Congress for the past 2 weeks while he proceeds to go on every news program imaginable and say, well, it's the Democrats shutting down the government. Well, You have to have a House vote to reopen it, dude. Like, okay. And what are you really afraid of? Why are you not calling Congress back and actually seating Adelita Grijalva? Could it be the Epstein files? The question then becomes, why would Mike Tiny Johnson be afraid of the release of the Epstein files? And I don't think it's any more mysterious than Donald Trump told him to not release them under any circumstances. There's a chorus of voices when it comes to Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Numerous reporters over the years have said that he gets very angry or very, very nervous if someone brings up Jeffrey Epstein in front of him in any context, right? We also know that he reached out to a number of right-wing influencers. I hate that word so much. Right-wing personalities, people like Charlie Kirk, saying you need to stop talking about the Epstein files. Well, Charlie Kirk, to his credit, refused to do that. And then he ended up assassinated, which has sparked all kinds of other conspiracy theories, right? Other people on the right, such as Ben Shapiro, took Trump's phone call and said, okay, we won't talk about Epstein anymore. It says a lot about these people that you're talking about a man who raped underage women, raped young girls, and we can't talk about that because the president doesn't want us to talk about it because he thinks it will make him look bad. Everybody munch on that for a moment.
Well, so this is the thing that I don't understand. By the way, I was looking this up. Apparently, Punchbowl News is saying that since July 3rd, which is when this all like came to a head, and Mike Johnson was like, "Nope, we're all going on summer break. See ya." They have only been in official like all the House session for 20 days.
Yeah.
Since July 3rd. But okay, here's the thing that I don't. Okay, so during the Biden years, I was pretty much focused on everything else. There was the whole COVID thing that we had to, get through, and inflation, blah, 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 blah. But in the meantime, MAGA was constantly talking about Epstein, apparently, and Trump was too. I mean, he was using it in a useful way for him to attack the Clintons. And then he went back and forth on, was he killed? Wasn't he killed? Well, I think maybe he was killed. And then he said on the campaign, I'll release the files. And then he doubled down on it in the fall of last year. Like, I'm going to release the files. And then they get into office and all of his little, cronies are saying, we're doing it. We've got the list on our desk, right? Attorney General Pam Bondi. And they're all saying about how it's coming. It's coming. Here we go. Here we go. And then all of a sudden it's not. And that's the thing I don't understand is like, if he's involved with this, why was he peddling in it and trying to use it to his advantage? And now all of a sudden he's like, do everything you can to shut down the government, literally, to keep from getting these files out into the public.
I mean, I think, first of all, I think it's desperation on his part. The thing about Donald Trump as a politician is he plays it well in that he's extremely pragmatic. Politics is always a game of pragmatism. And I really wish liberal voters would remember this sometimes when they have their purity tests. Donald Trump was willing to say or do anything to get elected, particularly in the context of he was a recently convicted felon on 38 felony counts. He was also facing charges of insurrection. He was facing charges of withholding government secrets. All the things, right? Which when he leaves office, will likely have to face some of them again. But that's another story. That's still
Supreme Court end all of that.
No, because in terms of the immunity he was granted, it was only official acts as president. Some of the things he did happened when he was not president, such as the bribery of Stormy Daniels, which is what he was convicted of in federal court, such as the withholding of national secrets. That he was not a president at that point. He was a former president, and former presidents are not allowed to keep our national secrets. The fact that he wouldn't just turn them over to the FBI is ludicrous, but Trump only thinks of, he calls them his boxes. This is documented in several books. He's a horrible pack rat, and he won't throw things away because they're his. And he won't give things to the federal government because they're his. They're in my box. You can't take my boxes. He only cares about the boxes. He doesn't care about what's in them. It's a weird, territorial, spoiled child, materialistic thing. Fine, right? So when it comes to Epstein, he said he was willing to release all the files. He made overtures to that effect. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel did the same thing. And then it all stopped. And there are all kinds of theories as to why. The one that I hear that I think is most compelling comes from Michael Wolff, the journalist who's a biographer of Trump. He's known him for many years, interviewed him dozens of times, and he's published 4 books about him. Michael Wolff has consistently said that he has seen, because he also interviewed Jeffrey Epstein and he's released portions of those recordings, in fact. He swears that he has seen Polaroid photographs of Donald Trump partying with nude underage girls. Whether or not he did anything more than that, we don't know. Presumably these photos, which were kept in a safe by Epstein, are now in the possession of the FBI. That was a question that was asked of Pam Bondi in her Senate testimony last week, which she refused to actually answer. If those photos still exist, they almost certainly are in the possession of the FBI, not the Epstein estate. Though we've seen that the Epstein estate has things that the government never took that we didn't know about, you know.
We are talking with author, entertainment critic, and lead anchor of Occupy Democrats TV, David Reddish. We're going to have more with him. He's got a lot of news that he's unpacking for me. We're going to take a break, though, and with corporate media bending the knee to MAGA, support for independent news and talk is more important than ever. Like The Ghislaine Show, like Occupy Democrats TV. Listen to the advertisers and sponsors in our breaks. Give them a shout out on social media, or even better, do some business with them. Tell them you heard about them on The Ghislaine Show, either on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, or WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. And while you're at am950radio.com, be sure to sign up for their newsletter. More from The Ghislaine Show on there, and all of the progressive news and programming you want from Minnesota and the world. Go to am950radio.com, scroll down on the homepage, and sign up with your email. More with David Reddish when we come back. Of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome back to The Ghislaine Show. It is 33 minutes after the hour. I'm your host, John Parker. It is our weekly Unpack This For Me episode where an expert guest joins us to talk about issues facing the LGBTQ and allied community. My guest today is David Reddish. David is the lead anchor and commentator for Occupy Democrats TV. He is a member of the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association, Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics, an official Rotten Tomatoes accredited critic, and the award-winning author behind the novels The Passion of Sergius and Bacchus and the Sex, Drugs, and Superheroes series. Okay, before we leave Epstein, because we're never going to leave Epstein, this is just going to go on for forever. That's my question, though. Given your background, like, where do you see this story going? I mean, Tiny Mike Johnson, as you call him on Occupy Democrats, seems very clear that he doesn't want the House to do anything when it relates to the Epstein files, and apparently he's going to find every way he can to shut that down. Like, are we going to get into a Pentagon Papers situation where some brave soul in the FBI is just going to leak them all?
I mean, that is possible. I think at some point, Mike Johnson's going to have to face the music. At some point in Congress, we'll have to reconvene, even if the Democrats gave up everything that they're standing firm on, which is not going to happen. He would still have to reconvene Congress, at which point he would have to seat Adelaide Grijalva. He cannot delay that much more than what he's already done. That will mean a vote on the Epstein files, which will presumably mean they get released. I think it's interesting you bring up the Pentagon Papers there, and I think there are a lot of parallels to both that and Watergate with the Epstein scandal, in the sense that Johnson and Nixon with the Pentagon Papers and Nixon later with Watergate both kept saying, why won't this go away? I don't understand. And it's interesting that that's where the public interest has sort of landed right now. People seem less concerned with things that affect pocketbook issue. You know, they seem less concerned with things that affect their pocketbooks. So the sort of kitchen table issues of tariffs have a much more direct effect on the American people. Healthcare has a much more direct effect on the American people, but people are more fascinated by the Epstein story. And as I've been reporting on it, one question keeps coming to my mind from the Watergate era. What did the president know and when did he know it? That was a buzz term that came out of the Watergate hearings. And what I keep, which I think is also apt in this moment, but I keep coming back to, what did the president do and when did he do it? because it seems
Mm.
like he's covering up something he did, even if that is just hanging out with a guy that he knew was raping young women. He did it. The idea that he would be that close with Epstein for that many years and have absolutely no idea what was going on, especially after this birthday card thing that was released by the Epstein family to the public that was written by Donald Trump and appears to have the drawing of a naked woman on it, a naked underage woman, and references to young women in the card, which is something Trump has also referred to in the past. It seems like he knew something was going on. And I don't know how Trump voters will react if they find out that their chosen candidate was aiding and abetting a statutory rapist. I don't know why that would be
rapist.
and he is an adjudicated rapist, Trump himself. So I don't know why that's, a huge stretch for people. I know some of his voters tend to come up with excuses for everything he does wrong, everything that doesn't work, everything he's ever said, no matter how contradictory to something else he said. But I think the American people sense there's something here, and that's part of why our interest is piqued. The government shutdown is just a way to sort of delay that. And I think Mike Johnson is probably hoping that the White House comes up with some kind of strategy for deflecting criticism of Epstein, for withholding some of the files, something. But I don't know that Trump can do that right now, because I think Trump's in failing health, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. That's a whole that's a whole other
one, isn't
it? Yeah. To unpack is Trump's health. So this week, if I can pivot to a different topic, so this week, Trump has basically proclaimed himself the Messiah who's brought peace to the Middle East, even though there are already accounts of violations of the ceasefire. And at the same time, however, you were reporting about an interesting story coming out of not directly out of the International Criminal Court, but a conservative law professor out of DC. I'm blanking on the university, who was saying, wait, hold on a second. Everything that Trump is doing vis-a-vis blowing up boats originating from Venezuela, the International Criminal Court just arrested the Philippine president Duarte for doing the exact same thing.
Yes, that's true. It's important to recognize that the United States does not recognize the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. In the past, administrations such as the Clinton or Obama administrations have supported their actions and have vocally supported their decisions, but the United States has never joined the court because they don't want to be subject to it. I think the big reason for that, quite frankly, is that a number of Republican presidents, both including Donald Trump and especially George W. Bush, would likely be charged with war crimes. The International Criminal Court has never issued a warrant for an American citizen. They've never brought charges against an American citizen, but they have verbally criticized administrations for actions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now off the coast of Venezuela, where Donald Trump is just blowing up boats. What he is doing without congressional authorization. He does not have war powers to do this, but he's doing it anyway. What he is doing without evidence that he is sharing with the world or the American people. Certainly, I think we have a right as Americans to know what our president thinks is going on. He claims these people are running drugs, but if there's no evidence to support that fact, if there's no inspection, for example, of the boat, the American Navy could easily be stopping these boats and inspecting them and finding drugs and making arrests. That's not what's going on. Trump's just playing, video games and blowing up boats like they're nothing. And he's killing people in the process. Venezuela, of course, has denounced this, as would any rational nation that has its people being killed, whether they're criminals or not. This is not the way international law is supposed to work, and this is not the way we are supposed to do things in the United States. But it's going to keep happening. And the more it happens, the harder it's going to be for America to regain its national reputation. We're still healing from the war on terror, from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all the illegal, horrible things that happened there, including prisoner abuses, which was something that the ICC was very, very critical of, both at the time and subsequently. I would love it if an American president came in and recognized the court and basically said, okay, who do you want? And started turning people over. But I don't think any president's going to do that, because it would be an abdication of American authority.
So I had to look this up because I
Yeah.
was watching your video and I'm like, how? What? I was like, I don't even actually know how the International Criminal Court works. So apparently, it was created in 2002, according
Yes.
to my research, specifically for prosecuting war crimes. Let's say
Yes.
just as an umbrella term. There's apparently the Rome Treaty, which is, I guess, the thing that states sign on to say
Yes.
we are now accepting the jurisdiction of the court. Apparently, if I have this correctly, there are 3 ways that charges can go to the court. A state party, so a country that's part of the treaty. The UN Security Council apparently can refer things
Yes.
to them, and then a prosecutor within the court can also refer things to them. Israel, are they part of the Rome Treaty or not? Because they have issued, the ICC has issued an arrest warrant for their prime minister, Bibi Netanyahu.
Yes, and they are not party to the ICC. No, they did not sign on. There were a number of notable nations, including Israel, the United States, China, and Russia, that did not sign on to the Rome Treaty, which established the ICC. I'll let your listeners and you decide why the Israelis would not want to be party to this treaty, especially recently. But it's a pretty shocking thing that they issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu for war crimes. The United Nations has said what was going on in Gaza was a genocide. It fits the definition of genocide as ratified by the UN, and by the way, as was established in the aftermath of the Holocaust. So there's a great degree of irony there. And I talked to my friends in Israel. I was talking to a friend of mine in Tel Aviv yesterday, and he's very happy that the war in Gaza is over. He thinks Netanyahu's a criminal. He thinks, he admits that it was genocide, but he's always like, well, so many other world leaders have done this. Bush killed how many people in Iraq, and Obama killed how many people in Afghanistan, and Trump's killing people in Venezuela. And it's like, well, these are not all the same thing. There are specific criteria that have to be met in order for something to be considered a genocide. What happened in Iraq, what happened in Afghanistan, what's happening in Venezuela is questionable. But in Iraq and Afghanistan, that was not actually, they did not fit the definition of genocide. It was not enclosing people in a specific area, persecuting them because of their race and religion. It was not, there was not the blockading of humanitarian aid, which is the big thing that Israel did, ostensibly because they were looking for weapons. But if these are UN peacekeeping ships, why would they be shipping weapons to Hamas? Like, there's absolutely no reason for that. Netanyahu, in my view, is a war criminal. He did commit genocide, and he should be tried for his crimes. He's facing other trials in Israel first for corruption once he gets out of power. And I am not the only person to suggest that part of the reason the actions in Gaza went on as long as they did, first was to hurt Joe Biden, because Bibi had a very fraught relationship with Joe Biden and thought Trump would be easier to manipulate. And we've seen that's the case. He had Trump bombing Iran, for goodness sakes.
Well, my understanding also is that the ceasefire and the treaty was the Biden one.
Yes. I mean, this was the same one that was put forward under Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, by the way, had also brokered ceasefires that were agreed to that Israel then promptly violated, which is why no hostages were ever released. Trump does deserve some degree of credit for the hostages are released and Israel is withdrawing. That's great. The caveat that I would add to that is,
can Trump take credit for that, though? This is the thing that's getting me about this story right now, is that there's 2 presidents who gave Netanyahu everything that he wanted. There are 2 presidents that gave the exact same ceasefire terms, but Israel is keeping to one of those presidents' ceasefires for now and not the other one. And yet somehow Trump is going to get credit for this as being some great peacemaker. And I'm like, wait a minute here.
No,
and this is all predicated on the government of Israel, Netanyahu's government, saying, okay, I'll accept it now. We'll stop. Our goals are achieved. Let's have a ceasefire.
And Hamas, Hamas accepted these terms, which are basically surrender terms. Like, Hamas is supposed to be dissolved and completely withdrawal from any kind of Palestinian life, as per this ceasefire. We'll see if that happens, but so far they're making the right moves. In terms of Trump's credit for this, he deserves some credit for getting Bibi to go along with it, but the lion's share of credit should go to the Egyptians and the Qataris, because they are the ones that actually hosted and brokered the peace talks between Israel and Hamas. Jared Kushner was around for some of that, but he was largely hands-off. Trump wants to take credit for all of this. He doesn't deserve it. It's more that Israel finally started negotiating with its neighbors, which is something that needs to happen anyway. And Trump's also touting the Abraham Accords, which are kind of absurd that he sees them as this great peace treaty for the Middle East, because they're minor nations. Sudan, the UAE, Morocco, and Bahrain all normalized relations with Israel during Trump's first term. That is not that big of a deal, because if it doesn't involve Egypt, the Saudis, the Jordanians, or the Lebanese, which are all much stronger nations, much bigger geopolitical players in that region, and which are wealthier countries, frankly, if they're not involved with it, it's not really going to mean anything.
Well, yes, and I took us down that road, and I want to come back because the International Criminal Court, though, while it may pose maybe less problems for Trump, that doesn't mean that Hegseth and Rubio are necessarily off the hook there. And then there's another story I want to talk with you when we come back as well, which is the Trump revenge campaign.
Oh, Lord.
So I know, right? So we are I have to fit in one more break. Obviously, there's still a lot to get to here on the Gailey Show. We are talking with David Reddish, who is the lead anchor and commentator for Occupy Democrats TV, and also the award-winning writer behind the novels The Passion of Sergius and Bacchus and the Sex, Drugs, and Superhero series. Queer books that absolutely you need to put onto your list, and we're going to have links to them for you to buy and adore. Because you are going to. That is official Gailey Show editorial right there. One last break. Lots still to get to here on the Gailey Show. Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I'm John Parker. We are coming up on the top of the hour. It is our weekly Unpack This For Me episode where we bring in a expert guest to help me and us unpack major issues of the day facing the queer, allied, and American audience. Our guest today is David Reddish, who is the lead anchor for Occupy Democrats TV. So coming back, David, to the International Criminal Court. The analysis is suggesting that Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio may still be on the hook for what they are orchestrating and blowing up these boats from Venezuela.
Yes, the ICC has sort of signaled that they are watching this very, very carefully. And I think it's meant as much of a message to Donald Trump as it is to Hegseth and Rubio. Rubio, who's lost whatever semblance of credibility he had before, and Hegseth, who's a walking, talking joke. It's really, really low level. Ugh, just awful, especially after that generals meeting a couple weeks ago was just some of the worst political theater I've ever seen. It's wholly possible, if these guys keep blowing up boats off the coast of Venezuela, that they will be charged. I think the other message that the ICC is sending with this is maybe a message to the American people that Donald Trump is not actually running the show in Washington. Essentially, Rubio and Hegseth are handling defense and foreign policy. Russell Vogt, director of White House Budget and Management, is handling any kind of domestic policy initiatives with the budget. And Stephen Miller, the charming spectrum Nazi, Stephen Miller, is the one who is in charge of deportations, and we're living through his wet dreams right now of seeing people, have all kinds of torture and cruelty inflicted upon them.
Okay, well, we'll be tuning in to you to keep up to date on all of these stories. Finally, I wanted to have you unpack for us the Trump Revenge Tour.
Oh, Lord.
So we have I guess it's technically an indictment against James Comey.
Yes.
And then in the past week, we have a indictment against the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, who gave a very fiery speech on Monday night. If you haven't seen that, folks, you should check that out. I mean, come on.
It is, as you properly call it, the revenge tour. It's Trump is trying to find his vindication against people he sees as his enemies. The big irony to this is James Comey, in essence, handed him the election in 2016 with his announcement about Hillary Clinton's emails. Poor feckless Comey. If you've read his book, or if you've seen the miniseries The Comey Rule with Jeff Daniels, which is very, very good, by the way, you know that Comey also had all kinds of investigations into Donald Trump in 2016, but he didn't bring those up because he thought it would look too political if he did it. But because there was a Democratic administration at the time, he thought it would be political not to talk about the Hillary Clinton emails, even though she was just a tangential character in this investigation. Because Comey has said that Trump was in cahoots with Russia, or that his campaign was. This is why he's being indicted. What's interesting about this, in both these cases, we should say, first of all, that it's not entirely clear that they are constitutional. It's entirely possible, in fact, likely, because conservative scholars have been writing about this, that both of them will be thrown out on technicality because Lindsay Halligan, the state's attorney who is prosecuting both of these cases, first of all, it should be said that her predecessors all resigned because they said that these are politically motivated charges and that even if a grand jury signs off on them, there's no way you're going to get a conviction on them. So they resigned, at which point Trump appointed Lindsay Halligan. But the problem with that is that if there is no state's attorney, the president does not get to appoint one. The attorney general would have to do it. And so Lindsay Halligan's indictment may have no validity at all because she's illegally serving in this job. And by the way, she's not a prosecutor. She's never prosecuted a case once. She was an insurance lawyer that basically negotiated settlements. God. So it's not clear the cases will move forward in any case. They're both very, very dubious. In the Comey case, Comey's defense has already said, now that they're in the discovery period, you're withholding evidence. And the Department of Justice is refusing to provide the evidence that they gave to the grand jury that led to Comey's very narrow indictment. They indicted him with like the minimum number of jurors possible. And in the case of Letitia James, the charges are kind of frivolous and they may be on a technicality anyway. She's being charged with mortgage fraud because she owned homes in Virginia and New York, and the home in Virginia she had listed as a secondary residence, I believe, but it was being used as a rental property, which is a separate distinction. And she would have saved $18,000 by saying this over a 30-year period with her mortgage. So, and this is someone who can afford a house in New York. Like $18,000 is not a lot of money to her. It isn't. So it's, again, it's a very, very dubious charge. It is not going to be great political theater. I think it's going to be eye-rolling political theater. And most important of all, given the current congressional shutdown and current lack of budget, it's a huge waste of potentially millions of taxpayer dollars that could be going to something else. It may, millions of dollars are not necessarily, they're big money to most of us, but they're not really money, big money in the great government scheme of things. It is, however, money that could be going to healthcare or other subsidies that would help the American people.
We don't like healthcare in the United States anymore.
No.
The show is Occupy Democrats TV. You can find it on YouTube. They produce multiple videos a day while you're there, so you can stay up to date on everything that is happening. You can read David's reporting at muckrack.com/David-Reddish. You can also find him on the socials. He is the Gay Magneto. And David, it was so good to see you again.
Always a pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
I want to recommend again both his series of books and the Passion of Sergius and Bacchus and the Sex, Drugs, and Superhero series. We're going to have links in our show notes and on our websites, either at am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com, where you can purchase those for your reading pleasure, and it will be pleasurable. All right, folks, that is it for us today. Up next on WCPT 820 is Choose Views with Richard Chu. On AM 950, it's the Matt McNeil Show. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. And then at 10 p.m. Central, step into the unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghostbox Radio. And until this time tomorrow, keep it queer, America.